Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. Have you ever imagined a tiny spaceship challenging an entire alien armada? Let's get into the story. Captain Jake Powell leaned back in his command chair, the hum of the Pathfinder's engines a reassuring backdrop against the star-streaked void. The destroyer-class vessel was small, designed for speed and precision rather than the overwhelming firepower of battleships, but it was his pride and joy. Powell was a man of calculated risk, of pushing boundaries while meticulously planning every conceivable angle. The Pathfinder's sensors flared to life, the rhythmic pinging replaced by an urgent warble. Lieutenant Sarah Lynn, his tactical officer, tensed. "Sir, multiple unidentified signatures detected. Initial scans suggest a large-scale fleet converging on a populated sector, approximately 3 jumps from our position." Powell sat forward. "Elaborate, Lieutenant." She worked the controls, a holographic projection of the system shimmering into existence above the command deck. At least a dozen major capital ships, multiple cruisers, and support craft. Based on power signatures, it's not anything in the standard database. Intriguing, Powell mused. He had a soft spot for the unknown. "Helm, adjust course. Let's have a closer look." The Pathfinder slipped through folds of space, cutting months off the journey time with its experimental jump drives. As they emerged on the outskirts of the system, Powell's grin widened. It was even worse than Lynn had projected. "My God," she whispered. "There must be 50 capital ships out there." The armada was undeniably impressive. Jagged vessels like predatory insects bristling with energy cannons. Their intent was clear from the descending swarm of landing craft aimed at the system's populated planets. "Identify," Powell ordered. "Matching signatures to known databases," Lynn replied, fingers flying across the console. "Match found. Zerthax." "That's bad news, Cap. They're infamous slavers, genocidal maniacs." He frowned. That complicated matters. It wasn't the human way to abandon those in danger, but this was vastly outside his ship's weight class, and he had a responsibility to his crew. Then a different thought struck him, a spark of dark curiosity. "Lieutenant, what are the odds of us surviving undetected if we get up close?" Sarah looked at him, eyes flashing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew her captain well, recognized that gleam. "Honestly, sir, slim. That kind of force is going to have a massive sensor network." "But not impossible," Powell countered, a slow smile spreading across his face. "And isn't that far more interesting?" A collective groan rippled through the command crew. They'd heard that tone before. It promised sleep deprivation, close calls, and the distinct possibility of ending up as space debris. Yet, there was that undeniable thrill of pushing the envelope. "Scan for any gaps in their sensor field," he ordered. "Plot us a course right into the belly of the beast." The hours that followed were a tense ballet of maneuvers and evasion. Every time Powell thought they were about to be detected, Lynn found a way to wriggle them deeper into the Zerthax formation, exploiting gaps created by faulty equipment or overwhelmed sensor crews. The Pathfinder was a ghost, a testament to human engineering brilliance. Finally, they nestled close enough to witness the carnage firsthand. The Zerthax armada had descended upon a world populated by avian-like beings. Defensive batteries spat concerted laser slugs, but were pitifully outgunned. Smaller Zerthax cruisers were harrying the planet's primitive orbital defenses. From their vantage point, the Pathfinder crew watched the one-sided slaughter unfold. "Sir, the Zerthax, they're targeting cities, non-combatants." Lynn's voice was strained. Powell's jaw tightened, but he made a conscious decision. This was a battlefield, not a humanitarian mission. He needed data, needed to assess the Pathfinder's full potential. His hands clenched the armrest as he watched a city engulfed in a blinding white flash, a crater all that remained. "Target the nearest cruiser. Tactical, I want 1 shot, maximum power, and then evasive maneuvers." He didn't want to make them aware of his presence just yet. "Aye, sir." Sarah swallowed, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Moments later, the Pathfinder shuddered as its main energy cannon fired, sending a searing beam across the void. The impact was immediate. The Zerthax cruiser blossomed into a blinding supernova, vanishing in a blink. Powell studied the enemy ships. There was a momentary pause, then utter chaos erupted in the Zerthax fleet. The attack hadn't just destroyed a cruiser, Powell realized. It had sown absolute panic. The Zerthak's hive mind worked in predictable patterns, valuing efficiency and rigid order. An attack of such strength out of nowhere was an anomaly the collective mind struggled to compute. "They don't know where the shot came from," Lynn barked, a tremor of excitement in her voice. "Their sensor readings are going haywire." "Capitalize," Powell snapped, a cold thrill running down his spine. "Target another cruiser. Same drill, one shot, then immediate evasive pattern." The Pathfinder lashed out again. Another Zerthak ship vaporized instantaneously. The sense of confusion in the fleet was palpable. Their formation crumbled, ships colliding in their haste to scan and target the invisible threat. Powell watched with detached fascination as the Zerthaks were effectively destroying themselves. It was a testament to their limited capacity for independent thought. Without the hive mind dictating their tactics, they were lost. "Incoming transmission," alerted the communications officer. "Zerthaks, they're demanding to know who opened fire." "Ignore them," Powell ordered. "We're still under observation. Helm, take us deeper." He refused to break cover yet. Even in disarray, the Zerthaks had numbers, and a cornered beast was at its most dangerous. He needed more information, needed to map their movements and understand their weaknesses. But as the Pathfinder ventured further into the heart of the chaos, something was gnawing at him. Despite their primitive defenses, the avian creatures on the planet below were fighting back with unexpected ferocity. Their pleas for help flooded the Pathfinder's communications channels. The decision gnawed at him: collect data or intervene? He was a soldier, not a humanitarian. Yet he couldn't shake the image of that obliterated city, the voices crying out in desperation. "Sir, Zerthak's capital ships are repositioning." Lynn's voice was urgent. "They're converging on our location. It seems they've found us." Powell swore softly. This was it. The moment he'd both dreaded and anticipated. He'd poked the hornet nest, and now the swarm was turning its attention on him. "All right, people, we've got company," he announced. His tone was casual, belying the frantic pulse in his veins. "Helm, disengage stealth protocols. Tactical, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Let's show these bugs what the Pathfinder can do." As the ship's cloaking field flickered off, the crew braced themselves. Warning klaxons shrieked through the ship, signaling multiple incoming targeting locks from Zerthak's vessels. The tactical display lit up with an ominous web of hostile signatures. "Evasive pattern Delta 6, Powell commanded. The Pathfinder, seemingly insignificant amidst the massive Zerthak's force, suddenly became a blur of motion. It dodged and weaved through a barrage of enemy fire, its advanced engine systems and nimble design making it an infuriatingly elusive target. "Targeting systems are struggling to keep up with our maneuvers, sir," Lynn reported, a fierce grin on her face. "They were not expecting this." "Don't get cocky, Lieutenant," Powell chided, but there was a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "They're adapting. Concentrate main cannon on that capital ship. I want it out of the fight." The Pathfinder's main weapon roared, a concentrated beam of pure destructive energy designed to punch through even the heaviest of shields. The targeted Zerthak's ship faltered, its power grid overloading catastrophically. Seconds later, a chain reaction ripped through its hull, culminating in a spectacular explosion that lit up the vacuum of space. "Sir, the Zerthaks are launching fighters." "Welcome to the party," Powell muttered. "Deploy countermeasures and target those fighters. Show them what a real dogfight looks like." The Pathfinder unleashed a swarm of autonomous drones, each armed with rapid-fire plasma cannons. They engaged the Zerthak's fighters, a mesmerizing ballet of laser fire and twisting metal. Powell watched as the Pathfinder's drones tore through the Zerthak's fighter wings with ruthless efficiency. These weren't simulations or target practice. This was a real battle, and his ship, his crew, were proving their mettle against all odds. Still, the vastness of the Zerthak's fleet was overwhelming. "Damage report," he barked. "Holding steady, sir. Minor plasma burns on the starboard hull, but shields are at 80%, Lynn responded. Powell nodded grimly. They could take some hits, but their endurance wasn't infinite. He needed to turn this battle decisively in their favor, and soon. Yet, with every downed enemy, his conscience stirred. He couldn't ignore the desperate struggle beneath them. The avians were being slaughtered. If he was going to intervene, it had to be now. "Sarah, any sign of weak points in the Zerthak's formation?" he asked. She studied the tactical rideouts, frowning in concentration. The swarm tactics make pinpointing a central command difficult, sir, but there, she pointed towards the heart of the chaos, those 3 capital ships. They're consistently coordinating fighter deployment. They might be control centers for localized sections of the fleet. Powell narrowed his eyes. It was a gamble, but potentially a crippling blow. Helm, plot a course. Get us close enough for a strike. Sir, are you sure? We'll be deep within their weapons range, the helmsman cautioned. Do it. Powell's voice was steel. Tactical, prep the disruptor torpedoes. I want a simultaneous strike on all 3 targets. This was insane, almost suicidal. But that rush of adrenaline, that thrill of the impossible, that was why he did this. The Pathfinder darted through the mayhem, weaving around incoming fire with breathtaking agility. As they reached the designated coordinates, the ship unleashed a salvo of disruptor torpedoes. These weren't conventional explosives. They were designed to temporarily scramble a ship's systems, disrupt the hive mind's control. The results were immediate. Zerthak's formations around the 3 targeted ships dissolved into panic disarray. Fighters spiraled out of control, cruisers collided, their fire turning on their own comrades. For a precious few minutes, the Zerthak's armada was a swirling vortex of confusion. Powell seized the moment. "Transmit on all frequencies," he ordered. "This is Captain Jake Powell of the human warship Pathfinder. You're trespassing in protected sectors. We won't tolerate genocide. Leave these systems immediately or be annihilated." His brazen declaration echoed across the battlefield. The avian defenders, stunned into silence by the sudden turn of events, monitored the transmission in disbelief. To the Zerthaks, the concept of a lone ship challenging their armada was unfathomable. There was a tense pause, then a surge of angry buzzing filled the comms channel. Powell couldn't understand the insectoid language, but Lynn's face was grim. "They're not backing down, sir," she relayed. "They're rallying their forces, launching every fighter they have, and their capital ships are moving to engage." Powell grinned, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Perfect. Tactical, I want all weapon systems online. Helm, on my mark, put us right in the thick of it. Let's give them what they want." The Pathfinder became a whirlwind of fury. Its energy cannons lashed out, incinerating Zerthak's fighters and crippling the capital ships unlucky enough to stray too close. The ship was a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of unrelenting Zerthak's destruction against the overwhelming odds. Yet even the Pathfinder had limits. With each volley, its shield strength waned. Plasma blasts scorched the hull, and several decks reported internal breaches. Powell could feel the ship straining, his crew pushing themselves to the point of exhaustion. "Sir, shields at critical." Lynn's voice was strained. "Damage teams, patch them up, keep us in this fight." Powell grunted, his focus unwavering. And then, through the viewport, he saw a sight that made his blood run cold. A massive Zerthak's dreadnought was emerging from the core of the armada, its firepower capable of turning the Pathfinder into dust in seconds. He had overplayed his hand. It was glorious, but this is where it ended. The sheer scale of the Zerthak's dreadnought was staggering. It dwarfed the Pathfinder, a monstrous leviathan bristling with weaponry. As its titanic energy cannons powered up, Powell's crew felt a wave of despair wash over the bridge. "Evasive maneuvers, maximum power to shields," he shouted, but his voice felt tinny, lost in the vastness of the moment. The Zerthak's dreadnought fired, space warped with the sheer energy it unleashed, a lance of blinding light aimed directly at the Pathfinder. Yet, impossibly, it missed. The ship bucked violently as the beam grazed the edge of their shields, but stayed intact. Powell blinked, his mind reeling. Another blast followed, and again the Pathfinder survived, shields crackling, but holding. "What the hell?" Lynn whispered, her eyes glued to the scanner display. Suddenly, their comms crackled to life. It wasn't the harsh clicks of the Zerthaks, but a series of melodic trills and chirps, the language of the avian defenders. "This is Commander Alara of the Skyguard," a voice strong yet strained spoke in passable Federation standard. "Unknown vessel. You fight with extraordinary courage, but you cannot withstand the dreadnought alone. We are rallying our remaining squadrons for a last desperate strike. It may buy you crucial time." Powell hesitated. To accept aid meant revealing the true capabilities of his ship. Yet, "You fight bravely as well, Commander Alara," he replied. "If your squadrons can get close enough to that dreadnought, I think I can take it down. But the timing needs to be precise." Minutes later, he watched as the last vestiges of the Sky Guard, battered and defiant, flew in a tight wedge formation towards the Zerthak's monstrosity. It was suicide, a final act of glorious defiance, but that was precisely the distraction he needed. "Helm, lock onto that dreadnought," Powell commanded, his heart pounding. "Tactical, channel all remaining power to weapons. Prepare the experimental rail cannon." The rail cannon was the Pathfinder's hidden ace, a last resort weapon. It required an immense surge of energy to fire, leaving the ship momentarily defenseless. But the projectile it unleashed traveled at a significant fraction of light speed, capable of punching through even the thickest shields. As the avian fighters approached the dreadnought, drawing its fire, Powell gave the order. Every system in the Pathfinder screamed in overloaded protest as energy was pulled away from life support and shields. Lynn stared at the monitors, disbelief warring with fear. "Sir, you're going to drop our shields to 0. "Trust me," he replied, his voice eerily calm. "Fire!" For a split second, the Pathfinder was a sitting duck, vulnerable to the full fury of the Zerthak's fleet. But it was a calculated risk. The rail cannon roared, unleashing a blinding burst of light and raw kinetic energy. The projectile streaked across the battlefield, a line of pure destructive force. It impacted the Zerthak's dreadnought dead center, tearing through the armored hull like it was tissue paper. Secondary explosions ripped the Leviathan apart, illuminating the battlefield with a blinding flash. The shockwave washed over the Pathfinder, rocking it violently. Alarms blared, and smoke filled the bridge as vital systems overloaded. Yet, as the lights flickered back on, Lynn's scan confirmed their improbable victory. The Zerthak's dreadnought was gone, replaced by a swirling cloud of debris. Stunned silence filled their comms. The Zerthak's fleet, deprived of its flagship, was in utter disarray. Then, a wave of jubilant cheers from the avian survivors washed over them. The remaining Sky Guard squadrons were in full retreat, having used the chaos to their advantage. "Sir, the Zerthak's armada is breaking formation. Looks like they're withdrawing," Lynn reported, her voice shaking. Powell slumped into his chair, exhaustion finally catching up. His body was protesting, his mind an overloaded jumble of adrenaline and disbelief. They had done it. They had faced an impossible enemy and emerged bruised, battered, but victorious. His decision to intervene hadn't just saved the avians, it had also proven the Pathfinder's capabilities beyond a shadow of a doubt. This wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point, one that would etch the name Pathfinder into galactic history. In the immediate aftermath of the battle, the Pathfinder limped back towards Federation space, a shell of its former glory. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing breached compartments and tending to the wounded. The ship held together, but its battle scars told a harsh tale. Powell found himself alone in his quarters, staring out at the vastness that had almost claimed him. It wasn't the first time, and he knew it wouldn't be the last. The risk, the adrenaline, it was what drove him. Yet, somewhere among the wreckage of the Zerthak's armada, something had shifted within him. The thrill of combat had taken on a different weight. Comms buzzed, breaking his reverie. It was Lynn. "Sir, we've translated Commander Alara's final message. She wants to speak with you directly." Intrigued, he made his way to the command deck. A shaky holographic projection flickered into existence. A battle-worn avian female, her wings bandaged, but eyes filled with unyielding determination. "Captain Powell," her voice still carried the weariness of war, "you have earned the eternal gratitude of the Aryans and every surviving world in this system. You have proven something we had given up on, that even facing impossible odds, the heart of a warrior can make a difference." "We did what we had to, Commander," Powell replied gruffly. "Humans weren't supposed to do noble." Alara offered him a faint smile. "Perhaps, but sometimes what you have to do reveals more than you intend. We Aryans will never forget the Pathfinder or the courage of its crew. I believe this marks the beginning of something." Her voice trailed off, replaced by the hope flickering in her eyes. The call ended, leaving Powell to consider her words. They hadn't just proven the Pathfinder, they had changed the fate of an entire star system, forged bonds in the crucible of battle. His initial intention had been to assess his ship, but the echoes of this encounter ran deeper than cold data. For the first time in a long while, Powell felt something beyond the adrenaline, something that hinted at the purpose behind the power he wielded. The thrill of pushing boundaries remained, but it was now tempered by the undeniable weight of consequence. The Pathfinder would always seek the edge, but perhaps with a more discerning eye on what lay beyond it. The Pathfinder returned to Federation territory, a legend. News of their audacious victory spread through human and alien communications systems. Military strategists pored over the tactical data, marveling at the ship's capabilities and the bold ingenuity of its crew. Diplomats saw a shift in interstellar dynamics, the potential for alliances where once there was only indifference. For Powell and his crew, it was a strange time. They were heroes, icons across human space. Yet, in the eyes of their superiors, they were also loose cannons, proof of the destructive potential they had just demonstrated. The Pathfinder was grounded indefinitely, subjected to rigorous refits and upgrades under the pretext of security. Powell knew it was containment, punishment disguised as precaution. He was restless, itching to be back out on the frontier, to feel the surge of the ship beneath him, the thrill of the unknown. Yet he also understood the fear in the eyes of those in power. He had unleashed something, revealed a sliver of humanity's capacity for both extraordinary heroism and devastating destruction. Lynn found him brooding in the Pathfinder's empty cargo hold, a cavernous space now stripped bare for inspection. "They're afraid of us," she said quietly, mirroring his thoughts. "Afraid of the ship? Afraid of what we did?" Powell agreed. "Power changes things. It always does." Lynn joined him, their voices echoing in the metallic emptiness. "We never asked to be heroes, sir." "No." Powell grinned crookedly. "We just asked for excitement. Turns out the galaxy's generous with that." The silence that followed was filled with the unspoken understanding between them. Their actions had consequences beyond personal glory, reshaping the perception of an entire race. They had pushed boundaries, revealed humanity's potential to be a force for both good and ill. As weeks turned into months, Powell's impatience gnawed at him, until one day an unexpected summons came. Not from the Admiralty, but from a much higher authority. He found himself standing before the Federation president, a woman known for her wisdom and strategic mind. "Captain Powell," she greeted him, not with disdain, but with a hint of cautious respect. "Your actions, they were bold, reckless, yet undeniably effective. I won't deny you frightened many people." "With good reason, ma'am," Powell replied, unable to mask a touch of bitterness. "Do they still frighten you, Captain?" she asked keenly. "Your own capabilities?" The question hung in the air, a challenge he couldn't ignore. In the wake of victory, he had grappled with this very fear. His answer, when it came, was brutally honest. "Sometimes, ma'am. But isn't that why we need people like me, to stand on the edge and stare into the dark?" The president offered him a small smile. It was then she revealed a new assignment, a long-range mission far beyond the boundaries of known space, a chance to explore, to chart the course for humanity's future. The Pathfinder, thoroughly refitted and more powerful than ever, would be his once again. It was a cage, yes, but a gilded one, a leash with galactic reach. Powell had made his point, earned respect, and perhaps a hint of trust. The thrill was back, tempered with a solemn duty, a responsibility not just to push further, but to choose what lay beyond the next horizon.